Paul Wells, the senior writer for Maclean's, will moderate the first televised leaders debate of the campaign tonight. He joins me from Toronto as he gets set for the debate. Paul, good to see you again.
Hi.
Thanks for being with me. So how will you deal with the fact that the Prime Minister has decided he doesn't want to take part in this debate?
We're going to acknowledge it. We left the invitation open right up until airtime. We're leaving it up until airtime, which means there will be a podium there. We're not planning on doing a lot of absentee theater, pointing close shots of the empty podium and stuff like that. But it's fair to acknowledge that he was invited and that he decided not to come. But I basically have a lot of business with the leaders who are going to be there. We want to know what Elizabeth May's economics plan is. We want to know what Andrew Scheer's plan for the environment is. We want to know about Jagmeet Singh and foreign policy. And I figure we have more than enough to talk about to fill an hour and a half.
Are you concerned that that might be a bit of a challenge? Because I think the impulse will be there for the others to just pile on the guy who's not there and say less about themselves or not want to face too many challenges about their own policies when they can attack the guy who's not there. Are you expecting to have to deal with that too?
Yeah, the good news is there's a moderator and he's not infinitely patient. And I will point out that they are here and they did get a question and they're perfectly free to answer it if they decide to spend too much time piling on the guy who didn't show up.
Okay. What did you hear from? I think people will be curious to know what kind of conversations you had with the Prime Minister's people about this debate and whether you got a clear indication of why they decided not to come.
The only explanation they offered is the one they've made publicly, that they are awfully fond of the commission process that they set up with David Johnston, the former Governor General, deciding who gets to run the nominally official debate, and that on top of that, they're also awfully interested in the audience that will be watching the TVA debate in French in Quebec in a few weeks' time. And so we didn't have a lot of conversation. I didn't have a lot of chats with the Prime Minister's people. We sent them information about what our plan was. We sent them an invitation. They said they would consider it. And 20 minutes before we held the draw for speaking order in the debate, they announced that they wouldn't be sending anyone because they weren't participating.
Okay, what do you think of? I mean, that is the argument that essentially the two commission-sponsored debates are sufficient, but I'm going to do this other one over here, TVA, because of the massive audience that comes with it. What is your purpose? What is your objective in holding this debate when there are these other debates? Why do you think that's just not good enough just to have those other debates and you wanted to have this debate as well?
Well, in Canada, it has never been accepted by Canadian society that the right to ask questions is bestowed by some higher authority. I was raised to understand that the right to ask questions as a citizen is universal. It belongs to all of us. And it has been exercised in a lot of different ways at a lot of different times. During the last campaign, Chatelaine magazine interviewed all of the leaders and ran Q&As with all of the leaders. Peter Mansbridge at the CBC flew out to I think it was a farm in British Columbia, and interviewed Stephen Harper, and then he flew to wherever Justin Trudeau wanted to talk to him, and everyone was happy to talk to Peter Mansbridge. And so we decided we'd just have an informal process. We told the parties we're going to have a debate. If you want to send your leader, we'll be happy to welcome your leader. And all of them answered in a legitimate way. 3 of them said, "That's a great idea. Here we come." And one of them said, "Thanks for the invitation. I've got other business." That's fine, but I don't like the idea that there's only one legitimate moment at which questions may be asked of the leaders. Obviously, there's scrums every morning,
right?
But it's a different thing when Elizabeth May and Jagmeet Singh, who have been feuding for months, are finally going to be in a room together, and they're going to get a chance to address that obvious rivalry rather than asking them questions separately. That's the sort of dynamic you can only get in a debate,
right?
And we're going to take advantage of it.
You're a journalist, and some people would suggest that you've been critical of this Prime Minister. Do you think that played into it at all? Do you think there was anything at play that, look, we don't want to do debate with Paul Wells?
Well, because we didn't have a lot of long conversations, I can't know. My hunch is that was not the main deciding factor. That mostly it's because the Liberals honestly think that this new, untested, interesting debate commission process that they've come up with is the best thing in official leaders' debates that anyone has ever seen. And they really want to make sure it works by minimizing, not eliminating, but minimizing the number of invitations they take from other organizations. I'll tell you this. Any government that thinks that it can snow or cow any political commentator by hanging over them the threat that they will, at some future date, maybe not show up for an interview or a debate or some event that news organization throws, does not know journalists very well. Because I don't know a professional journalist who would tailor their coverage as a function of that threat, if any future government were ever to think that was a good idea.
All right, let's drill down on a little bit of the content of tonight. What are you going to be exploring with these leaders? What do you think Canadians need to hear about where they are on some of these key issues?
So we've broken up the evening into 4 blocks. Most of them are obvious. We're going to have a block on the economy to open it up. We're going to have a block on foreign affairs because there's an awful lot happening in the world. And we're going to have a block on energy and the environment, which basically means pipelines and carbon taxes. And then the fourth one, in 2015, when we had the debate on a similar format, it was on institutions of democracy. It was essentially a section on Senate reform. And that's not a big issue this time, so we've switched that out, and instead we've got a block on Indigenous issues, because you can go days and days and days on the campaign trail without getting asked about those issues, and yet you can't go 2 days as Prime Minister without having to figure out how you're going to address these huge challenges on Indigenous files. So we figured that this is important enough to merit a quarter of our debate.
All right. Well, we will be watching tonight, of course, Paul, and it'll be live here on CPAC. Paul Wells from Maclean's Magazine. Always good to talk to you, and good luck tonight.
Thanks very much.